Hello and welcome to Coffee with Dr. Carla. I'm Dr. Carla. This is Colleen. And we're glad that you're here with us today. And we're going to talk about some mental health related issues and hopefully start to end the stigma surrounding them. So we decided that we're going to focus on ADHD specifically and organizational issues. And one of the things that we're talking about is that it's that you're not your coach, so you're not diagnosing.
Nope.
Right? I do the diagnosing, and then I think that there's some diagnoses like ADHD that gets thrown around a lot, and there's some misunderstandings around it. And so before we jump in, I'm just going to remind viewers about a few things. So first of all, it's not mental illness on one end and mental health on the other end. You have to imagine two different axes. And so one is the mental health, and that's how well you take care of yourself. It's those self-care things, those routine things you do every day, right? And then on the other is mental illness. And all that means is, do you have something that's diagnosed, or is there something going on with your mental health that is diagnosable? So So, for instance, I have ADHD. I've had ADHD since I was a little kid, but it wasn't diagnosed until almost 3 years ago. So it wasn't like suddenly, 3 years ago, 2021, ta-da, I've got ADHD. No, I white-knuckled it through or figured out other ways of getting around. And finally, that I was like, okay, we've got to do something about this, right? Sure. So, but I've always had that, and so, but what varied was how well I took care of myself. So, so having ADHD, on those days that I keep up with my self-care, if I do the things that I know that I need to do, take my medication, allocate more detailed oriented things to the early morning, beginning of the day,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And mind you, that's for me. I know plenty of people who have ADHD that cannot do any of that stuff in the morning. They are best at night.
Yep.
That's all individual, right? And so just because of those things that I know about myself, when I do what I know I need to do to be at my best, well, then I can say I have good mental health, even though I have, this mental illness. Yeah. Now, on those days where my plate gets too full, or I forget to do my self-care stuff, or I push it aside thinking that I don't need it today because I want to do something else, then it shows up in my life significantly more. Or think that, doing something very detailed orientated in the evening would be a good idea, and it takes me 6 hours, and then the next morning it takes me 5 minutes.
Yes.
I mean, these are things that we slowly learn about ourselves. Right. But just because I say I have a mental illness doesn't mean that I need to be locked away, right? So just to so people understand that difference. So what we're really going to talk about today is like, if we acknowledge that whoever had, been diagnosed with ADHD, we're going to stay specific to that, right? And now you recognize that you need help with keeping you more on the positive end of the mental health side, right? And if you have ADHD, it does come in the organizational form.
Oh, absolutely.
And one interesting fact I learned recently was, I used to just tell people, I just have an attention type. I don't have the hyperactivity.
Oh,
right. Well, right, because I'm not bouncing off the wall. I mean, I can, but not not uncontrollably. Sure. Right. And then I was listening to a podcast, and they said, well, people can be internally hyperactive or externally hyperactive. I have my brain is the queen of monkey brains. I mean, and I'm like, oh my gosh, so I do have the H. Loud and clear, and it gets worse when I go to conferences. It's really bad, right? And
all the new information,
and I'm like, oh, look at all the stuff, right? So, there's a lot of ways that kind of thing can show up, and then impact the way we organize and show up in our life.
Of course.
So, So when you get a client like me,
sure.
right?
Yes.
Because when you get a client like me, then how do you begin? What are some of the things that you've noticed? You
I
know,
love it.
yeah, I'll just kind of hand you the floor and just tell me
thank
anything
you.
you want to tell me.
So much of what you said absolutely resonates. I have family members who have ADHD. I may have it, haven't been diagnosed, and I think that that's very common, especially of a certain generation.
Right. And
because
women.
And women. I just shared 2 articles. I wrote a new one a couple weeks ago on my own blog, and I shared one I wrote 2 years ago that was just the basics. And women are 4 times, they are diagnosed like a quarter of the time
Yeah.
as often as men. And that's not a criticism in any way. It's just that we ADHD shows up differently in every single person who has it. So more than 10% of the population has it, and even more and more likely because
Right,
they
because
haven't
we don't
been
even know,
diagnosed,
right, yeah.
right? Because we have figured it out. We've gotten the coping strategies. We've had good supports in our lives. And so very often I'll have a client, I had a client a couple weeks ago, and she was asking about her grown daughter who did have the diagnosis, but she also felt that she probably did as well and just hadn't gone through the steps.
Right.
But knowing that there were things that supported her daughter, that the daughter had learned, what could we figure out for her? And so some of the questions, some of the awareness that you had was exactly where I would start. So I don't diagnose, I don't do
Right.
that. And I also am pretty straightforward with my folks that whether you have a diagnosis or not, there are tools that every one of us can benefit from. So it's
Yeah.
not to say that this tool is a one for everybody. So you knowing what is your good work time and what isn't for you. That's huge. I am a morning person. That does not mean that anybody else needs to be a morning person.
Right, right.
And that there's any criticism if you're not. But if I know that about myself, how do I plan my day?
Right.
How do I, a client of mine, we talk about white space. Where do I want blocks of time? Knowing that blocks of time work for me, where do I want to put them that are best for my energy level, my focus? And again, that's an ADHD question and everybody else. So awareness of how it shows up for you or my client or anybody else. And then on their part, awareness that there are tools.
Right.
That there are strategies, that there are self-care. I really appreciate it. I don't even always call it self-care. It's like self-management. I know I need to be hydrated. I know I need good food. I know I need to not skip meals. I know I need a good night's sleep.
Yes.
That helps all of us,
Yes.
ADHD or not. And how do we support those structures, right? So
Yeah.
in coaching, we call them essential structures.
Yeah.
Do you call them that?
Yeah.
Environment, people,
Yeah.
education.
Yeah, the foundational pieces.
Yes,
Yeah, I don't know if
yes.
they've got any special names.
Mhm.
Maybe somebody does have that, but yeah, no, it's the basics.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll talk about, getting the 4 walls right.
I love it. Yes.
Meaning like housing, food, transportation, utilities. Depending on what's going on. But essentially, kind of getting those basic foundational pieces
Yes.
together so that the clients can start to make some sense, right?
Yes.
And I will say, and maybe we can close out with this, even though I know my mornings are a better time for me, it doesn't mean that it always, whatever it is that I'm working on, doesn't always go smoothly, right? And
No,
so,
wouldn't that be nice?
yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe if you want to just kind of speak some words of encouragement to people who maybe have some insight and are still finding themselves
Okay.
struggling. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So in the off the screen, right, in the conversations before we started speaking, one thing that I was thinking of when we were discussing that we were going to talk about ADHD is priorities. So if we say that everything is a high priority, nothing is a high priority.
Right.
If we say they're all our favorites, nothing is a favorite.
Right.
And so in any given day, actually I just had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and they were wondering why I wasn't somewhere on Saturday. and I said I was somewhere else. I was watching my son in a football game in the marching band at ISU. And that was, I had to decide what to do with my time, and that was the most important place that I could be that day. So anyone else could be doing what he was asking about, but only one person is my son's mom.
Right.
So I had to decide where I wanted to spend that time, and so I chose to spend it in something that was, they were equally important, but that was the one that I needed to choose. And when you said you have lots of thoughts in your head, I have a client who's very close to my heart, and as soon as they started on ADHD medication, they said they could choose which thought to listen to.
Yeah.
That priority piece, that choosing one instead of all at the same time, was a very helpful. It didn't mean the voices all went away or all the thoughts went away, but they could suddenly slow it down long enough to make that decision on what was the most important thing right now and actually choose to act on that.
Yeah.
So priorities.
Huge thing. Yeah. And so when my brain's going crazy, I jot them all down, and then I can go back and look and decide which one's going to take precedent, which one gets put in a parking lot. So, I think that will help anybody, but especially those of us with ADHD.
Yeah.
So remember, you can change your thoughts, discover your potential, and transform your life by focusing on your overall well-being. So until next time, continue on being the best you possible. Bye.